Dismissed on Thanksgiving morning, the day meant for gratitude turned into a quiet reckoning. Gordon Whitlock here, 55 financial consultant, clutching a chipped ceramic mug as the cold hum of the office air conditioner numbed my fingertips. That cracked mug, much like my fractured family, held more secrets than anyone guessed. Ever had a moment when everything familiar suddenly felt like a stranger? Share your story. I'm listening. I never thought Thanksgiving would end with me locked inside my own SUV, watching my family through tinted windows, feeling like a stranger at my own holiday. Cassidy, my daughter, slammed the door with a force that echoed around the driveway, then pressed the lock button on the fob with an almost cruel finality. The car's locks clicked, sealing me in. I gripped the steering wheel, its leather cool and familiar beneath my fingers. But comfort was a distant memory tonight. My breath fogged the windshield as I exhaled the cold air inside the car, mixing with the tension curling in my chest. Outside, the house was alive with laughter. The kind of warmth I should have been part of. But I wasn't. I was shut out both physically and emotionally. In my palm, I turned the key to our front door, over and over the smooth metal catching what little light the porch lamp spilled. That key represented years of memories. Every nail hammered, every dollar spent, every evening spent restoring the house alongside Lucille. Yet tonight, it was just a cold, meaningless trinket. Cassidy's voice reached me through the cracked open window, sharp and filled with frustration. "Dad, it's just a car. Why can't you understand?" She wasn't angry about the vehicle alone, I realized. It was something deeper. Something I had ignored for too long. I stared through the glass at her face, flushed with emotion and determination. Her eyes avoided mine, but the message was clear. I was no longer the man she thought I should be. The man who was supposed to keep up, keep providing, keep changing. I tried the handle again. No luck. The lock held firm, an unyielding barrier to what I used to call home. Inside, I heard Lucille's voice, gentle but firm, attempting to smooth ruffled feathers. She didn't notice me in the car, trapped and watching. The sounds of forks tapping plates and the low hum of conversation floated from the porch speakers, mixing with the chill of early winter air. I longed to be part of it, to sit down with my family and share a moment of peace, but it felt like a dream slipping further away. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. Years ago, Thanksgiving was our sanctuary, a time when everything else faded away. Now it was the setting for a battle I never signed up for. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Lucille. "Are you okay? Dinner's inside if you want to come in." I swallowed the lump in my throat. How could I explain that my own daughter had locked me out? I looked down at the key again, the same key I had used to open the front door every day for decades. Tonight it mocked me, useless. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my shaking hands. The cold leather of the steering wheel was grounding, but my mind raced. How had things come to this? When had the warmth in this family turned so cold? Cassidy's voice sliced through the evening air again, sharper this time. "You're stuck in your old ways, Dad. You don't listen anymore. Maybe it's time you felt what it's like to be shut out." Her words cut deeper than the chill in the air. I remembered the countless conversations where I'd tried to bridge the gap but somehow failed. The missed signs, the ignored warnings. Maybe she was right. I glanced back at the house, the porch lights casting long shadows over the steps. My family was there celebrating, but without me. A stranger locked out of his own life. My eyes fell again to the key in my hand. It was more than metal. It was a symbol. Of trust lost, of doors closed, of bridges burned. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an old photo of Cassidy, when she was 7, smiling brightly with a missing front tooth. The warmth of that memory clashed with the cold reality of tonight. A tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek, warm against the winter chill. I wiped it away quickly. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Cassidy turned and walked toward the house, her smile cold and triumphant. She glanced back once, and I caught a flicker of something softer, regret. Maybe. But the moment passed and the door shut behind her, leaving me alone with the silence. I started the engine, the hum filling the stillness. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. Thanksgiving had become a turning point. Something had broken, but maybe, just maybe, it could be fixed. I gripped the key one last time, then tucked it into my pocket. Tonight was a lockout, yes, but it was also a beginning. The sting of that Thanksgiving night lingered long after the last guest had left, and the dishes had been cleared away. Sitting in my quiet office at Lexington Controls, surrounded by the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the distant tapping of keyboards, I felt as though I'd been jolted awake from a long, numbing sleep. Cassidy's betrayal was no longer just an emotional fissure. It was a wake-up call demanding I look at everything differently. Papers were strewn across my desk, in what had once been an organized pile, now a chaotic mosaic of bank statements, receipts, and old letters. I'd always trusted Lucille and by extension Cassidy with our finances, but now those scattered documents told a story I had never anticipated. A story of secrecy, recklessness, and the slow erosion of trust. I picked up a crumpled receipt from a boutique downtown, dated just 2 months ago. The total was far more than what I'd consider reasonable, especially coming from our joint checking account. I stared at it, heart tightening. How had I missed this? Had I really been so blind? Digging deeper, I pulled out a thick folder filled with monthly bank summaries. Line after line revealed charges I didn't recognize, some small, some alarmingly large, all quietly siphoning money away without my knowledge. It was as if a shadow had crept into my life, unnoticed until now. My mind raced back over family dinners and holiday gatherings, trying to pinpoint when the cracks first appeared. Was it when Cassidy stopped answering my calls, or when Lucille grew more reserved during conversations? I'd brushed these moments off as the natural ebb and flow of family life, but now they felt like warning signs I had failed to heed. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Lucille entered, her expression gentle but concerned. She carried 2 mugs of coffee, one of which she set on my desk beside the chaos. "You've been at this a long time," she said quietly. Sitting down in the chair across from me, "Are you holding up?" I gave a weary smile. Trying to. It's worse than I thought. Spending the accounts, there's more going on than just a disagreement about a car. She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone in this. Maybe Emmett can help us sort it all out." Her words settled something inside me. Yes, I needed help, not just for the money, but for the family I was desperate to protect. That night, after the office had emptied and the building quieted to a hush, I opened my laptop and composed an email to Emmett. My fingers hovered for a moment over the keyboard, the weight of what I was about to say pressing down on me. "Emmett, I need to meet ASAP. It's about Cassidy and the finances. Things are worse than I expected." With a deep breath, I hit send. Minutes later, his reply arrived. "I'm here for you. Let's talk first thing tomorrow." I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under me. Relief and dread swirled together. The hours passed as I continued combing through statements on the screen. The cold glow of the monitor illuminated my tired eyes, reflecting rows of numbers and transaction details that felt like pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. Then, buried in a 401k account statement, I found a substantial early withdrawal made by Cassidy without any discussion or consent. The amount was shocking, a clear misuse of funds that had been intended for the family's future security. My heart raced. This wasn't just careless spending, it was a deliberate breach of trust. I pulled a worn legal pad toward me and began jotting down notes, dates, dollar amounts, vendor names, suspicious charges. I needed to be meticulous. Every detail mattered if I was going to stand a chance. Outside, dawn began to creep over Lexington, casting pale light through the blinds. The winter chills seeped through the glass, but inside me a quiet fire was kindling. This was no longer just about money. It was about reclaiming control of my life, and maybe, just maybe, starting to rebuild what had been broken. I shut the laptop and stacked the papers neatly, my fingers lingering over the edge of the desk. "This ends now," I whispered to the empty room. The first pale rays of morning painted soft hues across the walls. The cold was relentless, but I felt something new stirring determination. The familiar jingle of the diner's bell greeted me as I pushed open the door, the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the faint aroma of frying bacon, wrapping around me like a well-worn blanket. Lexington's spring sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, casting striped patterns across the scuffed wooden floor and weathered vinyl booths. I spotted Vernon, already settled into our usual corner booth by the window, nursing a steaming cup of black coffee, his salt and pepper hair catching the golden light. "Gordon," he said, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of years lived and lessons learned. "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders." I slid into the booth across from him, the vinyl squeaking beneath me. I managed a tired smile, though inside I felt drained. Thanksgiving was rough. Cassidy locking me in the SUV, it shook me more than I expected. Vernon's eyes softened with understanding. Family can be the toughest battlefield. I've been there. Lost a fortune once, not to some stranger, but to someone I trusted. Not just money, but respect, peace. Everything. He paused, swirling his coffee slowly. "You know, I once overlooked the small things. A missed signature here, a strange charge there. It's those little cracks that bring down the whole dam." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settling deep inside. I'm starting to see that. There's so much I missed. The charges on the credit cards, the strange withdrawals from our accounts. It's more than just money, it's a betrayal. Vernon leaned in, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. "You've got to be methodical. Check every transaction, every bank statement. Keep meticulous records, screenshots, paper copies, emails. Build a fortress of evidence." The practicality in his advice was a balm to my frazzled nerves. For the first time since that night, I felt a flicker of control returning. But it's not just the numbers, I admitted. It's the strain on the family. Lucille's quiet sadness, Cassidy's anger, it's like I'm losing them all. Vernon's gaze was steady. Betrayal runs deeper than money. It cuts into trust, into identity. Protect your assets, yes, but don't forget to protect your dignity and your heart. My phone buzzed abruptly on the table, breaking the moment. I glanced down. A message from Cassidy. "We need to have a serious talk." My stomach tightened. Vernon noticed immediately. "Whatever she says," he said quietly, "keep your calm. You're not walking into this alone anymore. You've got a plan, and you've got allies." We fell into a companionable silence, the distant clatter of dishes and murmured conversations creating a soft backdrop. I picked up my coffee, now lukewarm, and took a slow sip. The bitter warmth grounded me. Vernon smiled faintly, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "Remember, Gordon, sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or boardrooms. They're fought in the quiet moments where you decide who you want to be." I looked out the window at the gentle spring rain beginning to fall, the droplets tracing silver trails down the glass. The world outside seemed to pause, as if waiting alongside me. For the first time since everything started falling apart, I felt ready to fight. Not with anger or desperation, but with steady resolve. That afternoon, armed with Vernon's wisdom and Emmett's forthcoming support, I began piecing together not just a case, but a path forward, one step at a time. Winter had cast its long, cold shadow over the Whitlock household in late 2019, settling like a heavy blanket that muffled the world outside. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. The tension hanging in the air was palpable, charged with years of unspoken frustrations and recent betrayals that threatened to break apart everything I'd spent a lifetime building. That evening, Cassidy stormed through the front door with a fury that seemed to shake the very walls. Her footsteps echoed sharply on the hardwood floors, reverberating like the drumbeats of an approaching storm. Her face was flushed not from the cold, but from anger and determination, eyes blazing with a fire I no longer recognized. "I want the house," she announced, her voice slicing through the room like a knife. "It's time to transfer the deed. The house is mine now, and I'm not waiting any longer." Her declaration struck me like a blow. For years, I had poured blood, sweat, and tears into that house. Every plank of wood, every coat of paint, every carefully chosen fixture had been part of my legacy. Now it felt as though all of that was being stripped away by someone I had trusted most. I forced myself to stay calm, drawing on every ounce of self-control I had. From the worn leather briefcase beside me, I pulled out a stack of documents, property deeds, renovation receipts, bank statements, legal affidavits. Each paper was a piece of armor in the fight to protect what was rightfully mine. Lucille stood silently nearby, her face pale and drawn, her eyes reflecting the strain that had settled over our family like an unrelenting winter frost. She didn't speak, but her presence was a steady anchor in the storm. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone and dialed Emmett's number, the familiar voice on the other end a lifeline. Gordon Emmett answered, his tone grave. "What's going on?" I explained the escalating crisis, the sudden brazen demands from Cassidy, the suspicious financial transactions I'd uncovered, and the increasingly fragile state of our family's retirement fund. Emmett's voice grew serious, his usual calm edged with concern. "This is more than a family dispute now," he said. "It's a legal and financial battle. You need to be prepared." Cassidy, overhearing the conversation, slammed her fist onto the dining table, making the crystal salt shaker tremble. "You think you can keep me out of what's mine? Think again." In a gesture that felt almost symbolic, she flung the house key onto the hardwood floor. It clattered across the boards before coming to rest noticeably bent and twisted, a stark emblem of the fractured trust between us. I bent down and picked up the key, feeling the cold, warped metal press against my palm. My fingers trembled not from the chill, but from the deep ache of betrayal and the dawning realization that some wounds are far harder to mend than I had imagined. Through the speakerphone, Vernon's voice broke through the thickening tension, steady and calm. "Gordon, remember, this isn't just a battle of emotions. It's a battle of evidence. Keep your head clear, protect your ground." The room seemed to close in around me as the reality of the conflict sank deeper. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stand tall amid the chaos. "This house isn't going anywhere without my say," I declared firmly, my voice steady, despite the turmoil within. The bent key lay in my hand, a silent testament to the damage done, but also a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even the most damaged things can be mended with time and determination. Emmett advised that we gather every shred of documentation, prepare for legal negotiations, and brace for a potentially long, arduous fight. Lucille squeezed my hand gently, her silent support a balm to my frayed nerves. As Cassidy retreated, slamming her bedroom door behind her, the house seemed to exhale a shaky breath. The battle lines were drawn, and I was left alone with the weight of what had been broken and what still might be saved. The following morning, an avalanche of emails awaited me: bank statements, altered suspiciously alerts about alarming dips in the retirement account, and concerned messages from friends and colleagues. Among them, a detailed report outlining the scandal engulfing the 401k fund, painting a clear picture of how Cassidy's reckless actions had imperiled not just the family's financial future, but the very fabric of our trust. I stared at the glowing screen, the words blurring as my hands shook, holding the broken key. The cold morning light streamed through the window, casting long shadows over the desk, cluttered with evidence and memories. This was more than a dispute over a house. It was a battle for everything I had built: my legacy, my family, and my peace of mind. With renewed determination, I set the key down gently, knowing the fight ahead would test every part of me, but that I was no longer alone. The broken key still lingered in my mind, like a sharp reminder of the widening chasm in my family. It was no longer just about the house or the finances. It was about reclaiming control over a life spiraling out of my grasp. After the shock of that bent, useless key, I knew I had to act decisively and quietly before Cassidy could tighten her grip any further. I found myself sitting in the polished but unassuming office of Lexington Realty, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint aroma of leather-bound contracts. The early spring sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, casting slender golden stripes across the room and onto the stack of papers waiting for me on the mahogany desk. Preston, my real estate agent, was busy tapping at his laptop, his eyes flicking up occasionally to gauge my reaction. He was a sharp, practical man, the kind of steady presence I needed right now. "You're making a smart move, Gordon," he said with a nod, sliding a neatly typed contract toward me. "Given the market right now, your property should attract solid interest fast. I've positioned it at a competitive price, but with room to negotiate. We should expect multiple offers soon." I reached out the contract, feeling heavier than just paper, a tangible symbol of the choice I was making to sever ties with the past. My hand trembled slightly as I took the pen. the smooth weight grounding me. Signing my name felt like the first true breath of freedom I'd taken in months. Yet beneath the relief, a thread of unease pulled tight in my chest. Selling this house meant more than relinquishing a physical space. It was an admission that some things were beyond repair. Emmett's counsel rang clear in my mind. This was a necessary step to shield myself from the ongoing financial drain and the emotional chaos Cassidy's recklessness had unleashed. The countless hours of compiling evidence, consulting with lawyers, and gathering documents were finally converging into this decisive act. Just as I sealed the deal with a firm signature, Preston's laptop pinged softly with a new email notification. He glanced at the screen, a faint smile crossing his lips. Looks like we've got an appointment set with the buyer discreetly scheduled so Cassidy won't catch wind. Timing couldn't be better. That quiet orchestration was exactly what I needed. Cassidy was out visiting friends, unaware that her claim to the house was slipping through her fingers. I allowed myself a moment to lean back in the chair, watching the dance of sunlight and shadow play on the walls. For the first time in weeks, a fragile sense of hope bloomed within me, a hope that maybe, just maybe, I could reclaim some semblance of peace. But that fragile peace shattered abruptly when my phone vibrated sharply in my pocket. The screen lit up with Cassidy's name, urgent and accusing. "Did you seriously sell the house behind my back? This is betrayal." The message read, each word seething with anger and disbelief. My heart tightened, but I forced myself to respond with calm clarity. This was a necessary step. "When you're ready, we can talk." Her replies came swiftly, a volley of accusations and threats. "You'll regret this," she warned. "I'm contacting my lawyer. You can't just take away what's mine." The flood of texts spilled over with rage and betrayal, each message hotter than the last. The familiar feeling of being cornered returned, but this time I refused to be overwhelmed. I silenced my phone, feeling the weight of the decision settle deep within. Rising from the chair, I pulled on my jacket and stepped outside. The soft spring rain greeted me like a cleansing wave, drenching the pavement and soaking through my coat. The cold droplets stung my face and hands, but the chill was strangely invigorating. Each drop seemed to wash away the doubt and fear, leaving behind a steely resolve. Standing there under the gray sky, the storm inside me quieted just enough to hear my own thoughts clearly. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. Legal battles, family confrontations, uncertain futures. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. Whatever the coming days held, I knew one thing for certain: I was done waiting to be a victim. This house, this life, this legacy, I would fight for them on my terms. The summer sun beat relentlessly against the tall limestone walls of the Fayette County Courthouse in Lexington, casting sharp shadows across the entrance steps, where a small crowd had gathered, curiosity mingling with whispers. Inside the grand courtroom, the atmosphere was tense, thick with anticipation and the weight of what was at stake. This was more than a legal proceeding. It was the culmination of months of heartache, betrayal, and quiet resolve. The home I'd built piece by piece, the sanctuary I'd fought to protect from Cassidy's reckless grasp, was now on trial. Cassidy sat poised at the plaintiff's table, her expression a careful mask of determination, tinged with a hint of desperation. Her eyes bore into me across the room, a silent challenge that spoke of fractured trust and shattered family bonds. Beside me, Lucille's hand found mine, her touch steady and reassuring. Emmett, ever the composed warrior, shuffled papers, calmly ready to dismantle Cassidy's claims, piece by piece. Vernon, seated quietly in the back, watched with the knowing eyes of a mentor who had seen many battles fought and won. The judge, an imposing figure with a face lined by years of wisdom, called the court to order. The murmurs hushed instantly, replaced by the heavy stillness of expectation. Cassidy's attorney opened with fervor, painting a picture of entitlement and unfair exclusion. He argued that Cassidy, as a family member, had equal rights to the property, and that I had unjustly sidelined her. The courtroom absorbed his words, but I could feel the tension tighten, knowing that the fight was far from over. When Emmett stood to present our case, a quiet confidence settled over me. He methodically laid out the evidence we had painstakingly gathered: financial records, showing my sole payment of mortgages, renovation receipts, marking my personal investment, and bank statements tracing suspicious expenditures from Cassidy's accounts. But it was the home security footage that truly shifted the tide. The video played on the large screen, the grainy images showing Cassidy's repeated attempts to enter the house during my absence. Her hands fiddled with locks, her expression tense and determined. The courtroom was silent save for the soft hum of the projector and the occasional gasp from the audience. Cassidy's confident facade faltered visibly as the judge watched the footage with keen scrutiny. Emmett seized the moment, drawing attention to her mounting debts. Luxury gym memberships, designer clothes, extravagant dinners, all drawn from accounts that were meant to secure our family's future. Each piece of evidence stacked like bricks in a wall of truth, building an impenetrable case. Cassidy's claim crumbled under the weight of facts and figures. The judge leaned forward, the courtroom hanging on his words, as he carefully weighed the evidence before him. After what felt like an eternity, the gavel struck, echoing like a thunderclap. The court finds in favor of the defendant, Gordon Whitlock. The property and all associated rights remain under his ownership. The judge declared his voice resonant and final. Cassidy's reaction was immediate and raw. She stood abruptly, her face contorted with bitterness and fury. "This isn't over," she spat. "I'm done with this family." Without looking back, she stormed out the courtroom doors, shutting behind her with a decisive thud that seemed to close the chapter on her presence. I remained standing for a moment, the flood of relief mingling with exhaustion washing over me. The fight had been brutal and deeply personal, but I had emerged victorious, not just legally, but in reclaiming a part of myself I thought I'd lost. As the courtroom slowly emptied, I caught Lucille's eye and saw the silent pride reflected there. Vernon gave me a nod, a small smile playing on his lips, an unspoken acknowledgement of battles fought and won. Outside, the summer sun was high, warm rays filtering through the courthouse windows, lighting the path forward. The future was uncertain, but in that moment I felt a profound sense of peace. The house was mine to keep, and with it, a chance to rebuild. The first night in my new apartment felt oddly quiet. The soft hum of the city outside filtered through the cracked window, mixing with the faint rustle of leaves swirling in the autumn breeze. Lexington had changed with the seasons. The vibrant greens of summer had softened into warm amber and deep reds, painting the streets with a quiet elegance. Yet inside my small, sparsely furnished space, there was an unfamiliar emptiness. Freedom was here, yes, but so was solitude, each mingling like shadow and light. I sat on the edge of the worn couch, tracing my fingers along the smooth wooden armrest, letting my thoughts drift. The house was gone, sold quietly behind Cassidy's back, and though I no longer felt the crushing weight of that battle, a different kind of vulnerability had taken its place. Just then, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Vernon standing there, as steady and reassuring as ever. His eyes twinkled beneath his weathered brow, a small smile curling his lips. In his hand, he held a simple key. On a leather fob, the key to my new home. "Thought you might like this," he said warmly, handing it to me. The key felt cool and smooth in my palm, a tangible symbol of new beginnings. It was the third time a key had played such a crucial role in this journey, a prop symbol marking each phase of my transformation. This time, it wasn't bent or broken. It was shining, promising a future rebuilt on sturdier ground. Vernon stepped inside, settling into the modest living room as I poured 2 cups of tea. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the quiet broken only by the soft clink of ceramic. "I've been thinking." Vernon began thoughtfully about ways you can channel all this experience into something meaningful. "You've been through the worst, Gordon, but now it's time to heal and help others." I listened as he outlined an idea that sparked something deep within me, a community fund to support senior citizens in managing their finances. Many elderly folks, Vernon noted, were vulnerable to scams and mismanagement, just like I had witnessed in my own family's struggles. The idea felt right, purposeful, something that could turn pain into progress. Over the next weeks, I began laying the groundwork. The small apartment became my command center, papers, neatly stacked contacts, organized plans drafted. Lucille stopped by, occasionally bringing warmth and quiet encouragement. Her presence reminded me that healing didn't mean isolation. In the evenings, I found myself cooking simple meals, savoring the peace that came from routine and solitude. I'd sit by the window sipping tea as the golden leaves danced outside, feeling the slow, steady pulse of life returning. The microclimax came one crisp afternoon when I made the decision to formally launch the fund. The paperwork was signed, the mission clear, to empower those who had given so much to society, but were now at risk of losing their financial independence. As dusk fell one evening, a plain envelope sat on the kitchen table, its presence unmistakable. The return address was hers, Cassidy. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers hesitating on the edge. The past was a complex tangle of memories and wounds. I wasn't ready to open that door just yet. Instead, I set the letter aside, choosing to focus on the quiet healing unfolding around me. The new key lay beside the envelope, its polished surface catching the soft glow of the lamp, a beacon of hope and resilience. In this small apartment, surrounded by autumn's gentle embrace, I took my first true breath in months. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever came next, with strength, purpose, and an open heart. Spring had finally returned to Lexington, painting the town in delicate hues of pink and green, the gentle blossoms nodding in the soft breeze. The crisp air carried the faint scent of fresh flowers and new beginnings, a perfect backdrop for what felt like the most significant day of my life since the storm had passed. The historic church near the town square was buzzing with a quiet excitement, its old wooden pews filled with familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and community members who had followed my journey with quiet support. Vernon sat in the front row, his posture relaxed but attentive, while Lucille greeted guests with a warm smile, her presence a reminder of the steady love that had carried me through. I stood near the altar, the soft glow of the morning sun filtering through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the polished floor. Today marked the official launch of the Community Financial Empowerment Fund, a mission born from pain but blossomed with hope. As I spoke to the gathering, my voice steady, but filled with emotion, I could feel the weight of the past lifting. Each word was a promise to protect, to guide, to uplift those who, like me, had faced betrayal but chose to rise. The ceremony moved smoothly, prayers and speeches weaving together a tapestry of renewal. When the formalities concluded, a subtle murmur spread through the crowd, people eager to connect, to share, to rebuild together. Then from the back of the church, a quiet presence stirred my attention. Cassidy stood there, her posture tentative, but sincere eyes searching mine with an unspoken plea for reconciliation. I felt the room grow still as she approached, the distance between us filled with years of hurt and silence. But beneath the tension was a fragile thread of hope shimmering with the possibility of healing. She spoke first, her voice softer than I remembered. "Gordon, I want to try again, to understand, to rebuild." The words hung in the air, fragile and profound. Without hesitation, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small key, polished, gleaming, a symbol of new beginnings. I handed it to her, the gesture carrying more weight than any apology. "This key," I said, "is for the future, not just for a house, but for forgiveness, for a new chapter." For the first time in years, Cassidy smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. It was a sign, subtle yet powerful, that the walls between us might finally crumble. Around us, the church seemed to breathe in unison, the stained glass windows sparkling like jewels, the scent of blooming lilies filling the air. Outside, spring had fully blossomed, the world alive with promise. As the gathering dispersed, I felt a calm settle deep within me. The battle scars of the past were still there, but so was a burgeoning peace. The journey of healing was far from over, but with new keys in hand, literal and metaphorical, I was ready to walk forward. As the last light of spring sunset spilled softly across the new garden, the polished key in my hand felt less like an object and more like a promise, one of healing, resilience, and second chances. The fractured edges of the past had been carefully mended, much like that key, now whole again, reminding me that even the deepest wounds can be repaired with time and patience. Life often hands us moments of loss, disguised as beginnings, teaching us that justice and renewal walk hand in hand. Sometimes bridges collapse, so we can learn which ones are truly worth rebuilding. If you faced endings that felt like door closings, how did you find the courage to open a new one? Share your story below. Your experience might light the way for someone else.